Welcome to the Loaded Box Podcast,
where we never finish first because we finish last.
Thank you once again for listening to the Loaded Box Podcast. I am Ben Morgan. That was DJ Primo. And a special thanks to all of our Twitter followers who haven't yet blocked us. Matthew, Barry.
Yeah, he was never a Twitter follower, though.
What do you think about that clown, though? You want to break down the scenario real quick, in case people haven't heard or seen yet?
Yeah, I want to get Mitch on to talk about this as well. But he had a big hissy fit this weekend, and I was kind of sitting chilling up north in my cabin. I didn't know what the F was going on because I'm just chilling on the lake. And Ben says something, I don't know, on our Twitter page. So I was all confused. I was like, what's going on? So I checked out this beef between Matthew Berry and Mitchell Renz about the articles, where Matthew Berry writes an article that's like 100 facts to know for the football season or whatever, and Mitchell Renz wrote like 100 facts. He got Matthew Berry tweeted at Mitch Renz with like rolly eyes or something like that.
He said sigh.
Yeah, with rolly, with emoji of like an eyes being rolled, and it started a big battle. But I don't understand the battle because I've read both of the things. I read Matthew Berry's 100 every year. It's not even like a similar thing. So if you look at Mitchell Renz's, he breaks down 100 separate players with one fact each. If you look at Matthew Berry's, he does more like 100 and I would say 30 facts, because he does like 51A, 51B, 51C, blah, blah, blah. Like, I know his 100 had like 100 all the way to like F or something like that. So really he does like 150. And he does probably 25 to 30, I don't know, 50, I don't know, not 100 different players. He does multiple players in like 6 different facts. So it's not even close to the same thing. It's just the fact that they use the number 100 and facts in the same article, which is just ridiculous. Because if we can't copy people, then what are we doing?
Right, because look how many people do something as simple as a top 10 list, as a rankings list. NFL Network does top 10 lists all the time. If Matthew Berry ever says the word top 10, is he just as guilty as Mitchell was? Like, we can't do rankings?
Are we not allowed to rank players? Like, you rank players at each position. Is that illegal to do because he's doing it?
You got dibs, man. It's all him.
Yeah. Just don't rank them in the same order, maybe. I don't know.
So I have a potential scenario I wanted to run by you quick.
Yeah.
So what has ESPN been in the news most often recently about?
Firing people?
Who works for ESPN and got a little bitchy over some content that's competing with him?
Ooh, I don't know the answer to that one.
Wait, yeah, you do. Who works for ESPN and got bitchy? You just talked about it.
Matthew Berry.
Yeah. And who's potentially thinking that his job may be on the line?
Ooh.
Matthew mother effing Berry.
Oh, yeah, you think so?
So, just a scenario. I think he might be a little sour. I think he might be a little scared of potentially losing his ESPN gig, because right now so many people do fantasy football, and honestly, I think so many people do it better than he does. He was just like the first guy to really do it big and get his name out there in fantasy, and he was just the ESPN guy. So I'm not spreading rumors that he's getting fired. I'm just saying maybe his seat's a little warm, maybe he feels something coming, and I don't know, maybe he's just taking offense to it and it got the best of him.
I do know for a fact, though, that he got a raise and an extension last year because I listened to his podcast.
Yeah, in the NFL, though, I mean, they give guys raises and they fire them the next day. Look at the coaches.
But, yeah, so we were Ben mentioned, we were all blocked collectively as a podcast. Me and Ben's personal accounts and our Twitter account were all blocked by Matthew Berry because we were straight ruining him.
Yeah, he didn't like us. So DJ texted me and said that he personally got blocked. So then I checked our loaded box. Follow us on Twitter since Matthew Berry's not going to do it anymore, at Loaded Box. Yeah. But yeah, all three of us we're no longer in Matthew Berry's world. So
hey, we're the bad boys of fantasy football.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy.
But this week, well, we're probably stealing someone's content here. I'm almost positive, because we're doing potential bust candidates for the fantasy football season that's upcoming here. So DJ and I have each picked a quarterback, running back, and receiver that we're going to go through that we think, you know what, we're not straight up saying don't draft these guys. What we're saying are maybe be a little bit leery of him. They're potential bust candidates. So let's kick it off with the quarterback. Who's your signal caller that has that bust potential this year?
Before I get to that, can we start every podcast now with like fuck Matt Berry as well?
I think we have to.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm pretty sure that.
So that's
now that's settled.
yeah, that's a stone. I'll get on to my quarterback. So I'm starting. I'm starting with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, quarterback, as everybody who should know, is the quarterback for the Redskins. Has had 2 good fantasy years. He's getting a franchise tag for some stupid ass reason. He finished 2016 as quarterback number 5.
Ooh, that's hot.
A hell of a year, right? So I'm taking a big bust right off the bat, right? Everybody's got high expectations for Kirk Cousins, but I can't get over this fact, and I don't know how many times I have said this in our recent podcast that we have talked about him. He had 5,000 yards, but he only had 25 passing touchdowns. He had almost 5,000 yards, not quite 5,000, but almost 5,000 yards and 25 touchdown passes. What that tells me is that he struggles to score in the red zone. And that worries me because he statistically has one of the best pass blocking lines in all the NFL. So with that alone, he should have more than 25 touchdowns. It's not like they have running backs stealing touchdowns.
That's what I was just going to say. Like, who is that running back that's stealing the touchdowns? You know, I mean, I know that
exactly.
Rob Kelly ended up with some. Matt Jones really didn't do anything. Like, who are these people stealing the touchdowns? He had that many yards, and like, there's no touchdowns to go along with it.
Exactly. So that worries me. Plus the fact that he lost to Sean Jackson, Pierre Garçon, and then Jordan Reed is the ultimate question mark. Like, he's not going to play all 16 games. If he plays half the games, they're probably happy. So that they did get Terrell Pryor. I can't really. I don't know what to think about him, and nor does anybody. He had a solid season for the Browns. They're getting Josh Doxson back, who hasn't played a snap in the NFL, so you don't know where they're at as far as what's the word I'm looking for? Being in sync, I guess, like the band group. So that makes me more worried.
Right. What I was going to ask you.
So that makes me a little more worried.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because, like you said, he's losing 2 of his top guys in Jackson and Garcon. Like you said, he still has Reed, who's a top 3 tight end in the league when healthy.
And I forgot about Crowder.
And that's the thing. So they have their slot guy in Jamison Crowder, who I do really like. He's like the one consistent receiver coming back. And then, like you said, Doxson is it's almost like his rookie season all over again after playing just a handful of snaps last year. And then you bring in Terrell Pryor, who looks like he has really good talent, but is far from proven despite what he did show. So how hard do you think it's going to be for Cousins to get in sync, like you said, the boy band? How hard is it going to be for him to get in sync with these guys right away like that?
That's a lot of guys. That's a lot of guys you have to get in sync with. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's tough. The thing is, too, like if you look at Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garcon, they're not huge names anymore, really. They're both getting a little bit older, but still, they're older, they're veterans, and they've been there before. Whereas guys like the guys they brought in, Pryor, who is young, and then Doxson, who's obviously super young, they might be more talented at the end of the day, but still, they just haven't done it yet, so you don't know.
Yeah. So, and speaking of that, also, I have my X factor, all right? If you don't believe in any of those things, believe in this. That locker room and that organization are already a mess. Like, the worst owner in the NFL, Dan Snyder, he's the worst. They don't know what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. They keep franchising Kirk. I don't know if anybody's going to get along, so that factors in and makes everyone, I think, less motivated to play. I feel like it's going to be a bunch of Albert Haynesworths on the field.
Right.
So, if none of that, you don't believe in any of that, believe in a locker room freaking disaster. Because that's what they're headed towards right now.
They can't even get their mascot and team name figured out.
I know, they're the R words.
They are the R words. Yeah, I guess I like that as a potential bust candidate. I think he perfectly fits the mold of what a bust is, because there actually is how do you really label a bust in fantasy football? You know, is it someone that is expected to do awesome and then just doesn't live up to that hype, or is it someone that's expected to do awesome and then they finish towards like the bottom of like their tier in that position?
It's tough because it can go off of expectations. It can be like they finished top 10 last year, so you expect them to be in the top 10 this year, which is kind of what I'm going to bring up a little bit later. So
yeah,
it's a tough one.
I'm just pulling it up now, and I have Kirk Cousins as my 12th ranked quarterback this year. So, like you said, he finished as QB5 last year. So if you're looking at him at QB12, he's the bottom tier of your starting quarterbacks. And I think I would be okay if I wait and he's like my last guy. I'd be maybe okay with him as my starting quarterback. I still think I'd rather have someone with a little bit more upside and then maybe even have him like right away as that backup.
You know who's a big Kirk Cousins and a Redskins fan?
I don't really know many. No.
Matt Berry.
Matt Berry. Ah, shit! I just thought of Matt Berry.
Oh, what a transition!
Well, fuck that guy then. I'm not drafting him. Nice.
Throw it out there.
You have anything else you want to throw in on Cousins, or should I move on to my quarterback?
It's your garbage prediction. Hey, yeah, go ahead with yours.
Okay. This is quite the transition because your guy finished as QB5. My guy finished as QB6. I'm going according to Yahoo. I don't know what you did for yours, but mine's on Yahoo. Do that again. All right, the magical pause button. DJ was doing sign language. So what I was saying was you picked the 5th ranked quarterback from last year, and I did the 6th ranked, and we're staying in the same division, and my guy is Dak Prescott. I want to start with the good. So in 2016, obviously his rookie year, he outscored Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, Marcus Mariota, Cam Newton, Derek Carr, Big Ben, Eli, and Stafford, who are all decent named quarterbacks, and when you think of fantasy, are guys that are usually starting quarterbacks. He ended up with 23 passing touchdowns, 6 rushing touchdowns, and over 3,600 yards as a rookie. So I'm saying that, and then you look into 2017, and he's ranked as the 13th highest quarterback right now, going in the 9th round. So based on those things that I just said, that sort of seems like a bit like a steal. If you're getting the 13th ranked quarterback, he could potentially be a backup, but I see a lot of people that want him as their starter right now. But the 3 quarterbacks that I said right after him, it was Rivers, Manning, and Stafford. I would take all of those guys right now over Dak Prescott. I finished up my rankings a couple of days ago. I have Dak Prescott as my 17th ranked quarterback, so I am pretty low on him. Going back to where his average draft position is right now, like I said, he's at the 13th quarterback, which makes him super close to being a QB1. But like I said, with that threat to run, he may end up as someone's top quarterback. But I think that it's super risky, and we've said this before, really risky to rely on quarterbacks who you bank on rushing TDs with, because he finished with 6 last year. If you take away 3 of those rushing touchdowns, that drops him to the 10th ranked quarterback, and he's just 1 point ahead of Jameis Winston, and he's within 10 points of Mariota, Tyrod Taylor, Andy Dalton, Russell Wilson, and Derek Carr, and a lot of those guys missed time in 2016. So if you take away 3 of his rushing touchdowns, he basically becomes like that 15th ranked quarterback. So if he continues to run in touchdowns, he's probably worth being a starter if you wait for a quarterback. But I think the bust potential here really outweighs the reward that you get a guy with him. So if you're going to go with the whole wait for a quarterback strategy, I would rather target Winston or Mariota, Rivers, Tyrod, maybe even pair Dak with one of those guys if you're picking them close to each other. But that's my bust guy, and a guy I'm avoiding this year is Dak.
Do you think the fact that Des Bryant is going to be assumably healthy this year, is going to shoot him up maybe a couple more spots compared to last year as well? Yeah,
when I was doing my rankings on Dak, I almost talked myself out of labeling him as a bust and moving him up. But I just think now that there's film on him, I don't think he's going to be as effective. I do like Dez. I'm a huge Dez Bryant fan. I think that the Cowboys are missing a number 2 receiver after that. If they could have Dez and another solid number 2, and I think Cole Beasley's fine in the slot, but they're missing that other number 2 guy. I really do like Dez, but I think the defense is going to be able to key in on him and Zeke, and I think that's going to take away from Dak's potential. I think when the Cowboys get a solid number 2, when Dak's in like his probably third or fourth year, I will then like him, I think, as a fantasy option. But right now, just the fact of Dez Bryant being healthy and a year with him isn't going to motivate me to want to take him in fantasy.
Do you think, I'm interested to see, is he still on the team? Is it Bryce Butler?
Oh,
What's
yeah.
his name?
Yeah, I do like him.
Yeah, he kind of shined there in the playoffs, and I know he was a highly touted athletic guy coming into the league and in college even, and he kind of showed that maybe that lethalness that he can bring as well to the team. So he really shined at the end of last year, and I thought that was interesting because he made some crazy, at least one crazy catch, but he made some good plays. I think maybe just against Green Bay he was playing really well. So
yeah,
he's going to be an interesting guy as well.
And he flashed in the preseason like he was making a name for himself. He was legit. And then when the regular season came, he just didn't get as many opportunities. But then they also drafted Ryan Switzer, I believe, the slot guy from North Carolina. And not saying he's going to be a dominant receiver by any means, but I think he can be an effective guy though. The thing though about putting your eggs in a basket with includes Bryce Butler and Ryan Switzer is I like the potential of both those guys, but when it comes to fantasy, there's going to be better options for that quarterback like that. So I do like Butler. I'm with you on Butler, but it's not enough to sell me on Dak Prescott. Are you higher on Dak than I am?
No, not really. I was just trying to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be exposed a lot more than he was last year. I'm in that same train. I think that he lacks arm strength, really, and he's a smart guy, and he has the ability to read defenses, but I'm worried about the ability to make downfield plays going into the next step of his career here.
Didn't it kind of seem like weren't the Packers up like 21-0 or 21-3 in that playoff game at one point?
I was just watching the end of that game.
And people were just like, all right, they're going to bring in Romo. Like, how long is Dak's leash? Like, I think that's BS. But it just kind of goes to show that that's the Packers defense. That was nothing, not a great thing to go against and struggle as early and as often they did in a huge playoff game. He's a rookie year in playoffs, but
he didn't really have any chances. It wasn't the fact that they needed Romo, and it's that he wasn't getting on the field at the point. It was Packers just going off for a while. Once he finally got to play, they came back and tied it.
Do you think Zeke makes Dak better too, just because he takes a lot of pressure off the quarterback?
Well, I mean, not just Zeke, but the offensive line and Zeke make almost any quarterback better. But, I mean, the offensive line, 100%. That just pure running game with any running back behind it, I think. Freaking Joseph Randle had 3 touchdowns one game. Like, even him behind it makes, I think, a quarterback more lethal. Because you have play action, and you don't have to go through more reads than one most of the time because everybody's biting on the run.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's going to be my guy. Let's move on to running back here. Who do you got as a potential bust candidate at that position?
Oh, you're going to love this one.
Uh-oh.
I've got your boy.
Haha.
Jay
Choo, choo. Jay
Train. University of Miami Dolphins. Like a college team, right?
Yeah, they're kind of like a college team, yeah.
Yeah, basically. He finished last year as 2016 as RB11. You know what? I'm really pissed because when I did look at the rankings from results from last year, I used ESPN's, so I wish I would have used. Yeah, this was before the controversy, and now I'm angry at myself.
You fed in.
Never using ESPN's numbers again.
Nope.
but he finished, according to ESPN Standard Scoring League, RB11 last year. Pro Football Focus. One reason I don't like him is Pro Football Focus had the Dolphins ranked as the 30th worst offensive line in the league last year.
Ugh.
Which I don't know. I don't watch a lot of them, but listening to you, I didn't think they were going to be ranked that low. But I don't know how many weeks did you say that their offensive line was completely healthy?
They played as a completely healthy unit. I think it was 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay, so
Which
all of what?
which he averaged 19.4 fantasy points per game.
Say that one more time. I
Oh,
lost for a second.
when he had the healthy line, he averaged like 19.4 fantasy points per game.
Yeah. So all of J&J's, that's what I'm going to basically talk about. I know you talked about it again, but I just wanted to go back and look because I broke down the teams. So all of his fantasy points came in a total, I would say, more than a majority of his fantasy points. Came in a total of 4 weeks in 2016. It was week 6 versus Pittsburgh. He had 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 7, Buffalo, 214 yards and 1 touchdown. And also Buffalo again in week 10. Wait, I don't think that's right. I think it was week 16.
Week 16.
I mistyped there. Week 16, 206 yards. He had 200 yards twice against Buffalo and 1 touchdown. And then the Jets, he had 111 yards and a touchdown. Now, Buffalo had maybe one of they gave up 4th most rushing yards in all football last year. And then the Dolphins had a good. So, you know what? He was playing against a really bad defense there. So, that's one thing. Jets, they played off of a bye. So, they obviously had a game plan going into that game. And then Pittsburgh, I guess they just had a good game. So, that's the one game I'm going to give him respect for getting the yards. But that's 4 games.
Yeah.
4 games where everything is. Outside of those 4 games, he didn't have one game over 80 yards and a total of 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns outside of those games and not a game over 80 yards. That's 12 weeks out of a guy that you're not scoring at all. Like, you're not getting points. You wouldn't even get to week 16 with him because you would lose in your fantasy leagues because of him.
That's the
Earlier.
thing. He's going to be your running back 1, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not going to get any points out of them, I feel, and this is the sample size. Plus, I have, I don't know if you want to talk to that. I have more off of my eye test because I'm not a stats guy. But not being a stats guy, I'm a big eye test guy. I feel like, again, I can watch something and kind of judge how a running back is going to perform from there. He's one of those guys that I just don't think has great vision. Like, he can't, if the hole's not there, he's in trouble. And being a great running back is like adjusting to a hole moving. He doesn't have good lateral movement. He just, to me, is not a good runner. He's just a bowling ball of a guy that doesn't want to go from side to side. He doesn't get going very fast and kind of goes at medium speed the whole time. So just watching the guy, he's not anybody who looks like they should be a top running back in the NFL, especially in fantasy football-wise. So I wouldn't draft him if I were you guys.
Yeah, he's not super elusive. The thing he does break tackles well. You mentioned his offensive line. I haven't seen a running back quite as often as he get hit as often as he did before he even gets to the line of scrimmage. So some of the times where he would get like a 2 to 5 yard run, it was well earned. I know that you're not a huge fan of him and his skill set altogether. I know that you're not a huge fan of just him as a running back. I feel like you don't give him quite enough recognition and praise as maybe he deserves. I think you might be a little bit too low on him. But the stats that you said, where all of those points were coming in just a handful of games, you can't deny that. I was writing a piece about Ajayi, like a preview piece for football, and yeah, when the starting line was healthy and he's averaging nearly 20 fantasy points a game, by all means, he's a running back 1.
Yeah.
Those weeks 10 to 15, where it counts, where you're either fighting for a playoff spot or you're in the playoffs, he had 1 touchdown during that stretch. And if that's your lead running back, that's...
You like consistency.
Exactly. There was no consistency there. And then you talk about that Dolphins offensive line. So now you got rid of Brandon Albert. So you're moving Tunsil to left tackle, who we think is going to be good, but not 100% sure. You have a brand new body in at Ted Larson, who was basically like a career backup at left guard. Pouncey is hurt every other week at center. So
every year.
Yeah, you have no consistency there. You've got a fossil in Jermon Bushrod at right guard, who a lot of people thought might even consider retiring. And then you have a former first-round draft pick who is also not very consistent in Juwan James at right tackle. So there's that offensive line. I think it's continuing to get a little bit better. And maybe Asiata, who they drafted in the 5th round this year, can potentially step in for Larson. But then you're relying on a rookie left guard. So I think when you're drafting running backs too, it's kind of important to look at what's in front of them. You look at Jordan Howard, who is probably on a worse team, but as you talked about in the last podcast, he's got one of the best offensive blocking offensive lines in the NFL. So maybe taking a guy like him over Ajayi and the bust potential, even though. Well, yeah, I have Howard over Ajayi. Let me check out my rankings real quick.
I might have Howard in my rankings top 5.
Oh, I actually have Howard 9, Ajayi 10.
Wow, I would put Howard top 5 personally this year.
But you know I have Lamar Miller up there.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. You can have him.
I don't see a scenario where Ajayi completely bust, just because I think that the Dolphins are really gonna try to commit to the run, and he's the guy, because behind him it's Damian Williams and Kenyon Drake, who are, I don't want to really call them just straight up scat backs, but they're not that guy that's gonna tote the rock all the time. So
Kenyon Drake's my boy.
I like Drake, but man, I just don't see him as an every down 10+ carry running back. So I think Ajayi is gonna get just a ton of work. And I think that's just going to make him relevant. That's my only.
I'm an SEC fan, but I feel like I have a stupid affinity for Alabama running backs and just players in general, I should say.
It's because you were infatuated with the dude that played for the Browns. Oh my God, I forgot his name.
Trent Richardson. Like Trent Richardson.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't.
And then Fat Eddie, and then now Scarborough, and.
And I got Clinton Diggs is tearing it up for Green Bay as well.
Yeah, you just love those Bama guys.
Yeah, I don't know. They're good. I mean, lots of them are good.
Yeah, that's why they're Alabama. That's why they earn in every national championship ever.
I ain't going to be the Alabama coach.
I ain't going to be the Alabama coach.
Let's hear your garbage running back.
Well, he is a garbage running back. I don't know who he is.
Yeah, let's hear it.
His name is Ty Montgomery.
Oh, weird name.
Before I go there,
the one that plays for the Packers.
It might be. Before I go there, though, so we did our pre-podcast Twitter poll. Check us out at Loaded Box. We asked who of 4 running backs that we mentioned, which one had was most likely to potentially be a bust, and we had Ty Montgomery getting the majority of the votes at 40%. Jay Ajayi was next with about 30%. DeMarco Murray was right around 20, and Melvin Gordon was right around 10. So we did pick the top 2 from those in the poll.
Yeah.
I've went off on Montgomery before, and I think you know a lot of what I'm going to say. But So in 2016, he was the 38th ranked running back. So if he finishes anywhere even higher than that, I don't know if you can technically call him a bust. But I just think for all the hype that's going on around him right now, he's not going to live up to the potential as the 22nd ranked running back where he is right now, with an average draft position in the 4th or 5th round. Because if you're drafting him there, you're basically forced to have him as your running back 2 or definitely a flex guy. So when you look back at 2016, in Week 15 against the Bears, he had 16 carries, 162 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I called that game too, by the way.
Great, because besides that game, he never had more than 60 rushing yards in another game the whole season, and he only had 1 touchdown outside of that Bears game.
Yeah, check out his you know how many attempts he had each game?
Not enough. That's why I'm not hitching my wagon to him, because he's not that guy.
He had 10, and your fantasy points are based off of a guy who didn't get a full running back position in fantasy until Week 10, number 1. Number 2, he didn't start playing running back till about Week 6, and he was just basically out there to catch passes. So what constitutes a bust in this situation? What is your expectation for him?
What I'm saying, why I'm labeling him a bust in this, is because I don't think
he's... What's his ADP? That's what I want to know.
What I'm saying is he's not going to live up to his ADP. I told you if you would have been listening. It's in the 4th or the 5th round, which makes him a starting running back. I don't want him as my starting running back.
Yeah, it makes him a 2 or a 3.
A 2.
Yeah, or a 3. I grabbed 4 running backs usually in the 5th round.
Well, and this is another thing. You remember the stat that Mitchell Renz had in that article that he copied from Matt Berry?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
Aaron Rodgers had 31 touchdowns and no picks in the red zone. You've said it before. They don't run when they're near the goal line. So you're going to take a running back who doesn't get that many carries, and when they're by the goal line, he's not getting the ball. I just don't like the hype that's around him because of that.
He's going to be a PPR monster.
I should go back here. In PPR, I'm fine with him. In daily fantasy, where I get a point or a half point, I'm not mad about it. But in a standard redraft league, I don't want him as my starter. I did a little digging here and looked at the last 7 years of running backs with Aaron Rodgers. Only 2 of those 7 years did a running back finish as a guy that you'd actually want in your starting lineup.
Oh, this is good.
Because Eddie Lacy in 2014 and 13 had nearly 1,200 yards both of those years, and then basically double digits other than those years. Other than that, Lacy was under 800 yards and 3 touchdowns. Montgomery was last year. I'm going to throw that one out. In 2012, the leading running back had like 450 yards, and the leading running back for touchdowns, Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Grant, and DeJuan Harris all finished with 2. The year before that, John Kuhn led the team with 4. And the year before that, Rodgers and Kuhn led the team with 4. And their leading running back had anywhere between 500 and 700 yards. I don't want my starting running back to play for the Packers.
Okay, number 1, Eddie Lacy didn't play full years the last 2 years. So if you take his on pace average, he was around 1,200 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns the last 2 years. So you could, like you said, you can throw those 2 years out with running backs because he was going to have, potentially 4 good years. He's just going to stay healthy there. So they had he was a solid running back on that team.
But don't you think
the ball when he was healthy.
They did. They gave him the ball. But don't you think he's clearly a better running back than Ty Montgomery?
What I saw to Ty Montgomery, I loved. All right, he's slippery. I don't know what you saw it. You retweeted it or responded to it, but I know Pro Football Focus had something about him being one of the top guys of getting off of or run or
the elusive
run after the contact, basically.
Yeah.
Yards after contact, or
it was like the elusivity,
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I watched him do that. He was able to navigate through holes. He was the opposite of Jay Ajayi. He can get outside, he navigated through holes, found his ways when he needed to, but they didn't give him the ball that much. I think they're probably giving the ball a lot more. Plus, they're going to use him throwing the ball, so you're going to get the combination of 60 to 80 rush yards, what I'll take, and then 50 to 60 passing yards. And you still have 10, 11 points there if you don't score a touchdown.
Would you rather take Montgomery and have him be your second running back in the 4th or the 5th round, or would you rather wait and take Jamal Williams in the 11th or 12th?
I'm not drafting Jamal Williams.
See, I would rather take a flyer on Williams in the 11th or 12th.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
I will start Montgomery against the Bears because in fantasy points he had 12.6 and 28.2 against the Bears. The rest, he had one game where he had 14.5. His best after that was 9. He had games of 2, 4.4, 1.4, 5.6, 4, and 6.1. And that's not even counting. I know you said he wasn't starting. Those are games where he was the starting running back. I think he's going to...
that's opportunity, though.
Okay, but I think... Well, what if the opportunity's not there this year? I think he loses people more weeks than he wins people weeks.
I disagree. I think he outscores Jay Ajayi this year.
I think we have a Twitter. I think we have a podcast bet.
Podcast bet.
Ring the horn.
Ring it. I'll take him outscoring as long as they're both healthy. Fantasy points wise in regular scoring, I think Tom Montgomery over Jay Ajayi.
All right, we'll talk and we'll hammer out the details and we'll tell people to bet next week.
Sounds good.
Let's move on to your receiver.
My receiver, and we've hammered this nail just so deep into the ground. I don't even know if you can see it anymore, but I'm going with Tyreek Hill. And yes. I know some people disagree. I get in a fight with one guy specifically. I'm not going to say names. He's been on the podcast before. I get in a fight with him about this, and I just can't ignore what I've seen. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver Chiefs. He finished 2016 as wide receiver, and this is according to ESPN, so I think he might have been higher in other leagues, but wide receiver 18. And I honestly do think he was higher in other areas, so I'm going with ESPN just in the scoring position right now, so wide receiver 18.
Yahoo had him there as well.
Yeah, and I know his scoring expectations are a lot higher this year now that they don't have Jeremy Maclin. Everybody thinks he's going to be the number one wide receiver. I don't
Terrible.
think he's going to be the number one wide receiver. I think it's going to be that one garbage wide receiver that I'm blanking on his name right now. What's his name? I can't remember. Anyways, he just reminds me too much of Tyler Lockett, Tavon Austin, and Cordero Patterson. All guys who basically do the same thing he does. If they run the ball, they do special teams, and then they catch a couple touchdowns. And Tyler Lockett and Cordero Patterson specifically have the same type of thing going on. They had a pretty good, like, freshman, rookie, whatever you want to call it, debuts where everybody was super high on them their second year. You draft them, and then they were just garbage.
Invisible.
It's just absolute garbage.
Yeah.
And that's just because, like, it took these defenses 1 year to be like, hey, if he's moving somewhere, follow him and make sure he doesn't do anything. And then they just become more of a decoy on a team than anything. Like, last year, Tyreek Hill had a total of 12 touchdowns. That's a good year. 3 of those were rushing. 3 of those were special teams. So 6 of those basically came out of uncommon touchdowns.
And you're not
the
banking on
last
that.
6 were receiving.
Right.
So they've already said, number one, they're not going to use him on special teams as much as they did. Number 2, teams aren't going to punt to him. That's just straight. Even if he is back there every freaking time.
The Devin Hester effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, with the rushing touchdowns, anytime with the weapons that Chiefs lack at this point, if you see Tyreek Hill coming across the line in motion, everybody's going there and they're taking their chances of giving the ball to Spencer Ware or one of the other running backs, or having Alex Smith trying to throw it down the field because he doesn't beat anybody deep.
Right.
So take big play guy away and make them beat you elsewhere is not a big deal because they're not going to beat you on top with anybody else. It's just that they're not going to do that. They have Alex Smith. Lastly, what?
Go ahead.
Lastly, if you're taking away those 3 touchdowns or 6 touchdowns that weren't receiving, he had 0 games with 100 yards receiving, and his quarterback is Alex Smith.
Right. At the end of the day.
He's going to be less of a factor in the passing game. I mean, you cannot draft this guy. You can't draft him as high. You need to just sit back. If he falls to you in like the 8th round and everybody thinks the way I am, then yeah. But
Right.
nobody is. Somebody's going to draft him in like the 4th round, 3rd round, somewhere 4th round probably.
Absolutely.
Don't draft him. You'll be very happy.
I think of the 6 people that we're going to talk about today, Tyreek Hill, it would be my number 1. Like, if I had to pick one guy in fantasy who's going to bust this year, I'm picking Tyreek Hill for all the reasons you said. And you brought up the idea of Macklin being gone. Who are they going to have now? Like, if Tyreek is lining up outside, like, okay, he's not going to be single covered anymore. He's going to be the center of the defense. Can he beat a solid cornerback when he's actually getting manned up by the best cornerback? And if they give him safety help, they're going to eat Tyreek Hill up. There's there's no chance there. The other thing I was going to say while you're looking it up, the thing with Tyreek Hill, you brought up his special teams and his rushing touchdowns and how they're either going to not kick to him and the defense is going to key in on him. Like there's a full season of tape on him now, so he's not going to be less effective. Defensive coordinators in this league, it takes a few weeks. In this case, if you're giving them the whole year, the book's out on him now. Look at the Dolphins with the Wildcat. It didn't take long. It took that one offseason. Boom, defenses were on it.
Yeah, they picked that shit up so quick.
You talk about Tavon Austin, Tyler Lockett, Cordero Patterson, all those guys. Like, I don't want to call them one-trick ponies. I think that they have a special skill set that can be used, but it can't be used on a consistent basis, week in, week out, to get consistent fantasy points. It's gonna burn you in the long run.
Chris Conley was their number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, Chris Conley. That's who you're going to roll out there with. And then Tyreek Hill's going to get a lot of attention, and it's not going to go well.
How did they not get Alshon Jeffrey or Eric Decker? I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't really get what happened there either. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's like they don't really fully utilize Travis Kelce the way it is, too. So maybe that's why they didn't get him. Maybe they just figure they're going to be mediocre with whoever they have.
Or draft. Oh, I don't know.
Right, and the thing is, it's like you said, if he falls to you in the 7th or 8th, okay, go ahead, take a flyer on him. But there's so many people that are high on him that he's not going to last that long. And I haven't heard a good argument yet as to why he's being drafted as high as he is. I haven't heard it. We should find someone that loves him and bring him on the podcast because.
Oh, I know. I already know somebody.
I don't even. Yeah, I do too. I don't want to debate it though. I just want to hear their reasons because we've given our reasons why we're anti him. I just need to. I don't know. I just need to see more of him as an actual receiver. If I'm drafting him in fantasy to play receiver, I need more production as a receiver. Like you said, he didn't have a 100 receiving yard game.
Nope.
Like, I don't know. I wanted to pick Tyreek Hill. I knew you'd pick him though, so I just let him go because I knew we'd both go off on him.
Yeah.
You got anything else on him?
No, I don't need to have more on him.
All right, I'll wrap it up with my guy here, and it's Demaryius Thomas of those Denver Broncos. Oh, one thing I wanted to say, you said that Tyreek finished as 18th receiver. I have him right now as my wide receiver 34. That's how low I am on him.
Yeah, I probably will have him. I'll probably put him down low 20s somewhere.
I mean, that's the likes of, we're looking at like, I have him surrounded by Kelvin Benjamin, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Parker, Emmanuel Sanders.
Wow, that's low.
Yeah, I'm not high on him.
You have some of those guys down there.
I am not high on him, man, at all.
Yeah. You're not high on Kelvin Benjamin or
last year kind of scarred me.
Yeah, apparently.
But my guy this year, for Demaryius Thomas, he finished 2016 as the 18th ranked receiver, and going into 2017, he's ranked 19th, so that'll put him around the 4th round. So he's going to be someone's wide receiver too. I don't mind him. I like Demaryius Thomas as a receiver, but there's a potential for regression here. If you look at his seasons, the 3 full seasons he played with Manning, he was between 90 and 115 catches every year. He was over 1,400 yards every year, and he was double digits every year. In 2015, when he played that partial season with Manning and partial with Osweiler, he still put up decent numbers. He had over 100 catches, over 1,300 yards, but his touchdowns dropped. He went down to 6.
Uh-oh.
And now when you look at last year, when he didn't have that Hall of Fame quarterback, he had 90 catches, 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. So not terrible numbers, but wide receiver 2-ish, you're kind of there. But he didn't score a touchdown the final 6 weeks of the season. So I've said this before. I like him as a receiver, but
shit! Well, that was after the bye too.
Yeah, he just kind of fell off. I like him as a receiver. I think there might be a little bit of a natural regression here with another new quarterback. I think Paxton Lynch starts. Even though I think Paxton Lynch is better than Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch is far from polished. One thing that he has going for him, though, is Demaryius Thomas did score a touchdown in 2 of the 3 games when Lynch played last year. So I'm not really down on Demaryius Thomas forever, but rather I would just rather have a different wide receiver or 2 until they get more acclimated with each other. Here's a couple of second wide receivers I would take over him, because I currently right now have Demaryius Thomas as wide receiver 24. So you might be like, well, what could potentially be a bust then? And like I said, it's not that I don't think he's going to finish around that 20-30 range. I just don't want him as my starting number 2 receiver. I would rather have him as a flex or take one of these other guys like Keenan Allen, Jarvis Landry, Martavis Bryant, Michael Crabtree, Brandon Marshall. All of those guys have a similar average draft position right now. Much rather have one of those guys as my wide receiver 2 than Demaryius Thomas.
Yeah, and he was the number one. He was the number 1 wide receiver at one point as well.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, some of those numbers, I was just looking at him, just eye-popping. 14 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns, 1,600 yards. Like, he was the next big thing, and now it's just like, didn't score the last 6 weeks.
You know what really, I think, affects him as well is when he had a decent quarterback, he could make plays downfield, and that opened up his effectiveness for that quick screen. That quick screen he catches and takes to the house, that thing was just lethal. Like, he killed people with that.
One of the best in the NFL with that.
Yeah, and those guys now weren't worried about getting beat over the top, so with one of those quarterbacks, they take their chances, and the quick screen just wasn't as effective.
You remember that, though, when it was Manning? And like you said, when he did that
Clearly, I remember it.
ability? Oh, my gosh, dude. You literally get him on a quick screen, and he was almost gone every time.
Yeah, it seemed like it was like unstoppable. He just take one step up the field, come back, catch it. All the blocks were set up, and he was gone.
Yeah, so this is kind of my one guy that I don't really want Dak on my fantasy team. I don't want Ty Montgomery on my fantasy team. I wouldn't be totally opposed to having Demarius, but not in a starting role. I don't want Demarius in a starting role, and where his average draft position is right now, that's as a starting receiver. I'd rather have one of the other guys I rattled off.
See, Demaryius Thomas is a guy I would, if I did draft him as my second wide receiver, I would draft a wide receiver right after him.
Right.
And kind of see how it plays out, because I'm not sure what I'm going to get. But he's a really talented wide receiver that can make plays and is a red zone threat, so I don't really know what to think. They don't have a tight end presence there. So I don't know. He's not one that I want to predict. I just want to put him in a spot. If I draft him, I draft another guy right next to him that I think can have a good season.
Right.
And see how he does.
Kind of play the hot hand in that sense.
Yeah, put him at like almost like draft two guys, make him a flex type of guy, and see if it becomes number 1, 2 wide receiver worthy.
That'd be the thing. If you can get Demarius Thomas in your flex, I'm not totally opposed to that. I just don't want to have to rely on him every single week. Not in that offense.
First 5 rounds, I draft all running back and wide receiver. So I mean,
yeah,
eventually do that. So or 6 rounds probably.
Yeah, probably at least, especially with 0 tight end strategy this year.
Exactly, and I don't draft as I mean, if I did, it'd be like 9th round.
I was gonna say.
But either way,
you'll probably go 7 or 8 rounds this year of straight running backs and receivers.
I actually might. No joke.
I'm looking forward to it.
Not even kidding. I probably will do that.
Nice. Well, let's sneak in one listener question here. Are you comfortable with Joe Mixon being one of your starting running backs this year in fantasy?
What about the concussion question?
We already addressed that on Twitter.
Fucking intern Logan thinks he's fucking hilarious.
He's basically Matt Berry.
Goddamn redheads. No is the answer. No.
No?
As long as Jeremy Hill and Gio Bernard are on that team and not cut right now, as of right now, with both those guys, no. Because it's like a situation where get in there, learn the offense, watch these 2 guys play, get rid of one of them the next year, and then he'll get his turn. That's what I feel.
Yeah, I'm really close with you on that as well. I think there's a lot of hype around him right now. After doing my rankings, I have Mixon ranked as 21st, which makes him a running back too, so that makes him a starter for someone. I'm a little leery of a rookie who wasn't like the clear-cut guy for a team. You look at the Jaguars, who went number 4 overall with Fournette, the Panthers, who went 8 overall with McCaffrey. They were huge on them, those guys. That was their guy in the draft that they wanted to leave with, and they got their guy. So when you look at Mixon, who still went not late by any means, he was still kind of a priority pick. But like you said, you've got Hill there, who's going to steal some goal line work. You've got Gio Bernard, who I don't have a ton of faith in, but I still think he's in the mix for some playing time.
Yeah.
So to invest in a rookie that wasn't like that top priority as a starting running back in fantasy, I'm with you. Not this year. I want to play it out. In a redraft, in a standard redraft, no. In a keeper like Dynasty League, yeah, you can sign me up for him there.
Yeah, but I have this stupid weird affinity for Jeremy Hill that I don't know if he'll ever go away. So
you do.
And his cocky, like, quiet confidence about him, like, makes me think, all right, he's actually going to be back this year. Like, I get it. He's like, oh, if they draft a running back, he'll be my backup.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I fucking believe him. Like, I believe it. I was the one guy in the entire world that's like, fuck yeah, Jeremy Hill. He's going to be your fucking backup. And I'm going to track your ass, and I'm going to hate it after. But he's going to have, like, 4 good games with, like, a couple of touchdowns where I'm like, yeah, fucking Jeremy Hill, guys.
Yeah, you are to Jeremy Hill like I was to Percy Harvin.
I'm a realist. Like, I fucking know I'm going to draft him, and I'm going to fucking regret it.
The good thing is, though, man, if he can steal those touchdowns, it almost warrants it, you know?
Oh, my God. I'm going to hate myself.
Well, it's like we had Mitchell on a long time ago, and we were talking about that. He had, like, that one awesome game against the Broncos last year where he busted off, like, a huge run. And then if you take that run away, it drops his, like, yearly yards per carry significantly. Like, it was just terrible.
That one fucking game, though, you think, it's like that one goal shot.
He's back.
Once you get that one goal shot, you're like, yeah, I can do this shit the rest of the day. That's what you think out of Jeremy Hill. I can do that shit next time I come out.
Yeah, then it doesn't work.
I'm ranty right now, and I love it.
Well, you done? Should we wrap her up?
Barry.
Fuck Matt Barry. Well, thanks again for listening. As always, since Matt Barry can't do it anymore, you should tweet us your questions you like answered on the podcast at Loaded Box. We're available on iTunes. Search Loaded Box. Subscribe, rate, and review. Thanks to the latest couple of reviews. A few more came in this week, so thanks to you who did that. Don't be left out. Join the club. I think that's all we got. F. Matt Barry.
Bye.